All right. Hello, everybody. We have a quorum here, it appears. Mr. Green is running a little bit late, but we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we can do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Southgate's mission statement, learning for life. Our vision statement, Southgate Community Schools, the best choice for students and parents. Item D, revision. Go ahead.
Do we need to have a roll call?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's do that.
I got a roll call here.
Yep, let's do that before we move forward. Thanks, Darlene.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Craig.
Here.
Okay. President Estimer.
Present.
Trustee Freitas.
Here.
Trustee Green is not. Trustee Lamos.
Evening. Here.
Trustee Pomponio.
Here.
Okay. And Trustee Sage.
Here.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you. We have a quorum. Moving on to item D, revisions and approval of agenda.
Let's make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Supported by Ms. That was a motion by Dr. Pomponio, supported by Mr. Craig. Any discussion? None? All right. Please call that vote.
Yep. President Estimer.
Yes.
Trustee Freitas.
Yes.
Trustee Lamos.
Yes.
Trustee Pomponio.
Yes.
Trustee Sage.
Yes.
Trustee Craig.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. We have our agenda for this evening. You guys received it in the email. I'm just looking to make sure that that's where we're at right now. I'm looking. I have two different ones. What brings us to citizens' comments, and we didn't have any.
We have no citizen comments today.
All right. Well, we can get ready. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Pomponio for bringing it to our attention that we needed to make sure we included citizens' comments in that. And so that is one reason why you saw an agenda sent out and then resent. So thank you.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. And typically, obviously, this is always an open meeting. If somebody were to come when we have it, even when we're having it off site, it's always open and people are welcome to speak at that. So thanks for pointing out that we needed to add that. All right, well, let's get into our winter retreat agenda. So this is just sort of our working meeting where we can kind of talk about our year, some of our goals, kind of how we want things organized, expectations from our superintendent or her being clear on what she wants from us in this situation. But the first part of it that we want to cover is organization and functioning of the board. So the first topic, and I just kind of copy and pasted sort of what we've been doing for the last few years. So some of this, if it's not necessary, we can skip on. But if we need to talk about it, we can. So the first thing that we talked about, and I talked to Dr. Pomponio about this right before we started, was the annual organizational meeting. So that's this meeting here. This was brought up on, and this also shows up a couple bullet points down under retreats. So I guess if this is one and the same, then we probably don't need to have it listed on there twice. But the way that we're currently set up, we don't really have, we kind of eliminated a few years ago, if not last year, definitely the year before, some of the different board member assignments that we had. So, we had board members that were assigned to different schools. And we had obviously our committees. Right now we just have our main committees, which is the policy committee and finance. Is there another committee, or is that the only two that we have right now?
That's all we have right now.
Okay. So that's what I kind of want to start by talking about. Do you want to continue as we are right now? And we can we're going to revisit this at our summer retreat as well. But do you want to keep it as we have it now, as far as not having specific building assignments, especially since we're virtual? We can sort of all kind of keep track and check in virtually with our schools. Do you guys want to keep it the way it is right now and not have specific building assignments like as we had it in the past? Keep it as we did in the 2019-20?
I think it's a good idea because I think all of the board members are going to different buildings at different occasions. So I think that, we're equally going to the building. So I think it's fair to just keep it off right now.
Okay. And if you could just keep us abreast of any of the, Dr. Irvine, any of the functions that we need to attend, because we're going to obviously be doing a lot more virtual things. And if we all kind of want to stick our head virtually, even in some of these buildings, if you could kind of let us know when events are coming up so we can help celebrate our children, that'd be great. And as far as, does everybody else agree with that? Does that sound, okay, I see some heads shaking. Yeah. All right, perfect. And then as far as the standing committees that we have, I think that we should talk about who's on those committees and how we want to, and if we want to change up or if you want to keep the membership the same. So let's start with, and then we'll make this official at the next board meeting. But let's talk about first the finance committee. So I always thought it was a great idea to have the treasurer be on the chairman of that committee. Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Craig? Does that sound like something that you can do for us?
Well, the committees have to be established, and then those committees should elect the chair.
I like the chair, sure. But will you be part of that finance committee?
Sure.
Okay. And then does anybody else want to volunteer to be on that? It would be nice if we could have, we can't have more than 3 board members on there, but it'd be nice to have a minimum of 3. And Andy Green is running a little late, but he'll be in a little bit, and we can always vote for him since he's not here, and assign him to certain committees if we so choose to. But does anybody have any interest in the finance committee along with Mr. Craig? Mr. Freitas?
And I can join along as well.
Perfect. All right. So we'll make that official at the next meeting. But right now we have Mr. Freitas, Mr. Craig, and Mr. Lamas on that committee. And I think that's an excellent makeup because Mr. Lamas had been on that before. And I think that would be a great support to Mr. Craig being the treasurer. All right. Well, let's move on to the next committee. And then we can add more if we decide to or talk about it. But the other standing committee that we currently have is the what did I just say? The policy.
Policy.
Did you still want to stay on that committee, Dr. Pomponio?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Green does want to stay on policy too. He had told me, so we'll keep that.
I think Mr. Sage is.
Yeah.
Mr. Stage, you want to stay on that committee?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the 3 members that will stay on that committee: Pomponio, Sage, and Green. And again, we'll make that official at the next meeting. And then at your first call of your meeting, you'll elect your chair, or if it hasn't changed, it hasn't changed, but we'll make that official. Are there any other committees that we want to form? Or are we okay for right now, at least till we get to the next organizational meeting, the next retreat? Are we okay with just those 2 main meetings? Go ahead, Mr. Sage.
Well, I don't know if it'd be under the same pretense, but with the construction, there's not a committee for that, correct? It's with the new construction moving forward. Is that considered a committee?
It's not a committee. We can form any committee ad hoc. We can make a committee. What was that considered before? Help me out.
Well,
I hear you, Jason.
yeah, is it possible though? I mean, so if there is a board member who would like to be a liaison to the work that's happening, they can join, the meetings that we have with Plant Moran, Cressa. They can join us in those. It would be great to have a liaison.
I think that's a good idea because there's really nothing to discuss for them to bring to that committee until it's all brought to the full board. And I would recommend Mr. Sage if he would.
Does everybody feel okay with that? Having a liaison for bond for basically the bond program or any new construction that they can sit on these meetings with Ms. Irvine when they can, and then maybe perhaps bring an update to the board on occasion. Does that sound reasonable?
I'd be interested in helping out. I think Mr. Craig is probably more versed than I am, but I definitely want to be involved at some point. Mr. Craig, I don't want to speak for you, but I just know with your background.
Yeah, Mr. Craig being his profession being in the building department. Is this what you're on right now? Do we have? I know you've sat in on a lot of these meetings. Is that by volunteering, or was there a specific committee that you did that through?
I was asked by the superintendent to be part of the pool conversations and to be part of the field turf conversations as well as Mr. Sage was part of the field turf conversations.
So it was unofficial. It wasn't a committee. It was just representation in the liaison. Okay. Right. Would you be interested in working with Mr. Sage when you're trying to at least cover most of those meetings between the two of you? Would you still be interested in doing that?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. I don't know if we need to make anything official on that, but if we do, that's something that we can mention.
No, what I'll do is just extend an invite to the virtual meetings to both Sean and Jason every time they come up. And then in those meetings, I think it'll be very helpful to hear what their thoughts are and their schematic design. I mean, that's just a great level to be involved in. And then we'll break off into groups. Like we're going to need a group to handle kind of the signage at the high school, everything from where the sign for the natatorium's going or whatever we have for logos and design features and the marquees. I mean, we'll need that kind of support for those meetings as well. So that's great. That's wonderful. I think it'll work out well.
And I was going to suggest a committee, or I guess we could call it when we need it, but something in lines of marketing. But if this can kind of serve for dual purposes. But as we get into some of those ideas, and that might be for the next school year when we're talking about marketing a little bit later, and when I say marketing, not only our brand, but also trying to attract more students to the school district and keep the students we have. That can be something that we talk about maybe at the summer retreat, because that's sort of probably when that plan is going to go into effect, since we're already in the middle of a year. All right. Is there anything else that we have under organizational meeting or committees or anything like that, or should we move on? All right. Next is board governance. And I usually fall on Dr. Pomponio for this with her experience with MASB. The only thing I'd like to have covered in this area is I'd like to add a couple things to our normal agenda, which isn't anything new, but it's new at least to this agenda. And that is a spot, and this isn't a spot that necessarily has to be done every week, but at least a reserve a spot on the agenda for two things. One, superintendent update. It would give our superintendent a chance to kind of basically just give us a quick update. So she does that through a Friday, but this would be a public update and maybe answer some questions if we had any, and be a chance for her to talk about that. And I'd like to see also, especially if we have if we're kind of getting back together with our treasurer, being part of this finance team, along with Mr. Friedrich and Mr. Lamos, I'd like to be able to see a finance update once again on there. We've come a long way in this area, and I remember being on this board with almost every one of you when we found some issues in some areas, and we promised ourselves we wouldn't take our eyes off of that, like in the areas of food service and stuff. So I just wanted to know if we could possibly add a finance update, and that way we get the information, and if we had specific questions, it's just very helpful to ask our finance director with the support of the superintendent right there on the spot and clear things up right away. So I wondered how you all felt about that.
That's fine, as long as it's not needed every meeting, but it's there if there's something to add to it. So I think it's fine just to have there that section. Okay.
And that way, I mean, she's on every meeting anyway, so she may not have an update, but she'd be there to answer questions. But there might be times when she says, I just wanted to point out we spent $5,000 or whatever, you know what I mean? It might be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal update where she's going to have to, spend hours working on it. I just, make sure if she has something to update both Ms. Irvine and our finance director, that would be an opportunity that I think that is necessary for us to be able to, I mean, we can always still ask the question during the meeting when we get to that part in the agenda, but I just wanted to make it official. And if we decide that it isn't working, we can pull it off. And then the other thing was
I had one thought about that, and
Yeah.
just keep it simple is maybe we should have a formal, here's the state of the state once a quarter or something like that. Certainly not every meeting, like you mentioned, Dr. Pomponio, but just an update, like here we are against plan.
Right. And I think, Rick, when we're talking, what is it, August or October, when they're doing the budget, when they're doing that new budget, and I think that would be a good point when they're presenting the budget to us. I think first one's in August, and then we do the revision in October. I might be off on those dates, but maybe that's a good point when they can do a kind of a state of the state, because that really is what they're down to. Letting them know they've analyzed everything, they know exactly where they're at and what our expectations are going to be going forward. At this point, I know everything's a little in the dark, but yeah, I think that's a great idea. So there are times during the year where we will need some type of a formal update. And then I think that would be incumbent upon you guys in the finance committee, along with Ms. Irvine, to work with the that type of agenda item for our finance director. Maybe asking her at those specific times when to give an update. Maybe that could be something that the finance committee actually works with them.
So I guess what I had in mind is it's better that we know before it's too late, right? So if there's a trend going on that we should discuss, if we know where we are once a quarter, and I'm using that time period just with no context, but I'd rather know in January if we're rolling off the skates are all the wheels are off, right? And I'm not suggesting they are, but that's when we'd want to know that so we can have time to do something about it. It's too late to do anything about it in August. I
guess that's a good point. So why don't we do this? Why don't we ask the finance committee to work with the finance director and set that date on an agenda for us, and then we'll go with that. Because once you guys get in, roll up your sleeves and take a look at what's going on, then maybe kind of come up with a regular date that they can perform that task for us quarterly or whatever.
I'm fine with that. Jason, Sean?
That works.
Yeah. Okay.
That works. Yeah.
Andy, per your request via your email or text earlier, we put you back on the committee that you currently sit on. What is it called?
Policy
committee. And then we'll make that official at the next meeting. Thank you for your volunteering. Hope your meeting went well today. Moving on, retreats. This was a question that was asked in my.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, part of this.
Sorry. Yeah. Board governance. I wanted to pass it to you. You're right.
So we're talking about meeting structure, work sessions. Are we talking about adding work sessions if needed?
I would say, yeah. We talked about, at least right now, every other week, why we're facing this 30-day requirement by the state, having a work session that, like I mentioned last time, to kind of continue the conversation in between meetings. I thought the last time it was very productive. So I would suggest that we do that right now, at least right during this pandemic, while we're looking at student enrollment. Right. So I would suggest work sessions during that time. And like this, we treat it, sort of based on your email that you had sent out with some clarification, where we have, citizen comment, public comment, and we obviously just treat it just like a regular open meeting, whether it's virtual or behind, in a building. So that would be my suggestions for us work sessions, that we continue to do this bi-weekly. Gives us some time to chew on it for 2 weeks before our final board meeting. And then Ms. Irvine will keep the kind of conversation going via email as she gets updates or answers our questions from those work sessions.
So you're suggesting that every board meeting we have a work session after,
No.
or just every other one?
Every other one. So like we did last
Once a
time.
month then.
Yeah,
So we'll
unless we have to meet prior to that, but I'd like to have a standing one once a
Yeah.
month. It might only be a 15-minute meeting. Who knows? Depending on where we're at. If this thing, if we go down below 5 or if we go up above 10, and it may not be that hard of a conversation. But I think that we owe it to our parents to continue the conversation and not just wait. And not that we are, but because we're continually analyzing this on a daily basis on our own time. But to meet as a group to find out where the group's at, and if we are having to make planning and preparation. It would give you enough time to be able to do that unofficially directed, but at least you kind of will know by the meeting kind of where to go.
Okay.
Is that what else do you have, Dr. P?
So that can be either before a meeting or can be after, because that's what we had before. It really doesn't matter, whatever the preference is.
Are you still? There was a couple people that still have a difficulty time getting here at 6, and that's why I'm always nervous about having 6 o'clock meetings. I know Mr. Craig has a long drive, and then on Tuesdays, Mr. Sage coaches. So I guess that should be brought to the board. Would you guys prefer a meeting after the meeting, or would you prefer a work session before the meeting? What's the preference of the board?
I think after, because then we know what's coming up, or what took place during the meeting that maybe needed.
So like last time we did it after, did that work good for everybody? Sage?
Yes, sir. Yep.
All
I
right.
think
Andy?
after's
All right.
great.
So
As long as I don't have a China meeting, a 4 o'clock meeting in the morning, I can do it. No problem.
yeah, you did it by candlelight last time. So
Yeah, that's true.
all right. So that's productive. Okay, so we'll do work sessions after going forward. And same thing. If we have to meet by a special meeting, would you guys prefer that to be at 6 or 7? Might as well throw that out there as a question too, because I never know the answer to that. Any preference?
Well, those that have some issues we should go with them. Whatever you think,
Right.
Sean and Jason.
I hate to say anything because my schedule changes all the time. But I mean, for
Yeah,
me,
it's
generally-
situational for me.
yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll just put it out there. I mean, we luckily so far, we usually don't have to have very many special meetings. I think last year we only had maybe 1, and this year we've only had 1 so far. So, but in the event that we do, I'll just pull you guys individually as I did this last time. But we will try to keep those on Tuesdays. So try to keep, for the most part, Tuesdays to board business, keep that 6, 7 o'clock hour open. I know that's not the case for Sean. He's going to have to make some adjustments in his schedule, but all right, we'll continue to do that. Do we have anything else in board governance that you want to cover?
Do we normally touch on pay? Everybody okay with that? Board education stipend?
Yeah, I think that me personally, and you didn't ask me personally, but my personal opinion is I think that let's wait and see where we are with student funding before we go into that. That's how my personal feeling is on it. I don't know. Yeah, but how's the rest of the board feel on that?
Mr. President, this is more informal, right? Yeah, I agree with you. I think if we don't know where our money is right now to even discuss any kind of pay increases, that doesn't look good. That's just my opinion.
You know what? I'm not talking about pay increases. I'm just saying as an organizational item, we just confirm it, move on. So we establish what we know. Oh, I need to get some training over here, especially during a pandemic. So I know for sure this is where we're headed. So we're staying the same, but just to have it as an organizational piece as we start the new year. I think
Okay,
just keep it the same. Let's keep it the same.
So keep that on the agenda. All right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, as far
right.
as training, though, because most of our classes, and I sent Mr. Sage a link today to some new training. That's all covered too. I don't think that we're not changing. We're going to keep that the same, I would assume, unless anybody wants to change that. But I don't remember what the rates are, or what our personal allowance is on that. But I don't think that we've changed that policy. So or changed that funding. I think that we keep that in place. I think it's important because I plan on attend some things virtually as well this year.
Right. No, that's yeah, I agree. Keep it the same, and if you don't use it, it just rolls over.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely, just keep the pay on the books so we're open and transparent, and what we're getting for the stipend, keep that open and transparent, and that's what we're doing this year. And next year we'll decide something else.
Sounds good. And if anybody else, I'm trying to look around the room. I'm not sure if Mr. Lamas has, or Mr. Craig, if you're interested in any of that MASB, or Mr. Friedis, anybody. If anybody's interested in it, I usually count on Dr. Paponio forwarding that kind of stuff when she gets it. But I did see one today that was on a Facebook post, so I did copy the link and send it to Sean. But if anybody else would like that, that was a new board training one. And Andy and I did that online, level 1, 2, and 3. I think we did it in a matter of just a few hours online. The more extensive training, the other MASB training where you had to go on site, they're obviously you can do the the board president workshop. You can do the advanced board president. You can do all that stuff now, obviously virtually too. So it does, for those that can't get the day off work to go to Lansing or don't want to leave town on a Saturday, it's something that you can do in a couple hours at home. Just to put it out there, that's available. So I would say talk to your MASB rep, Dr. Paponi, if you have any other questions. And speaking of that, will you get back to us as far as who you think might be a good nomination for that coming up, Dr. P? Because we've been getting some emails from candidates.
Okay, yeah, I've seen a couple
All right.
there. I wasn't sure, but I'll let you know because I know.
Yeah, because that's coming up on the next agenda, I think, where we're going to have to vote for them. So I usually I know you know most of those folks or know their recommendations. So I usually will go on your opinion on that.
Okay, I'll forward the recommendations.
I appreciate that. Any other board governance issues because we keep these bullet points very general, so I'm not sure if there's anything else that I'm missing. All right. This was brought up last time, and I don't remember what we agreed on. I went back my notes and didn't say. So there was a question on the last agenda: do we want to continue to have retreats or not? And we're here. So obviously, I think that it wasn't clear to any of us because nobody's text me or emailed me after this came out. I think this is productive myself. We can make it as long or as short as we want, depending on what we cover. But I think a retreat is important, whether or not we want to do it once or twice a year. I think because of our current situation, it makes sense to do it twice a year because there's some things that we might put off now because of this pandemic that we might have to address in the summer. So I'm for the retreats. I just wanted to ask the question to everybody else if this is something that you want to continue to do, or if if this is something we can handle in a work session after our after a meeting one time. I just want to see what you guys thought.
I like them. I think they're good. I think it's kind of like an informal conversation, kind of like get our bearings and see where we're at and where we're going to go, come up with a plan. For me, I personally would think like if we did one a quarter, I know saying more meetings isn't always the best thing, but I like to know where we're going, like where we're at right now and where we're going, have a plan forward. 6 months when we have these, a lot of things change in between.
Yeah, dramatically.
Obviously, past 6 months, but we're going to have a bond. We come with the bond money, this construction, with the new COVID CARES Act. We're going to be getting the teacher contracts. We have a lot coming. We want to brand our school. We have a lot of stuff coming up. So I think kind of putting it all off on one meeting in 6 months from now is a lot.
Okay. Well,
That's
we have
my personal opinion. I know other people have a lot more going on in their schedules and stuff like that. And
Well, what I was thinking is if we're doing 2 meetings, like we already have kind of pre-planned, and then we have these work sessions, we could probably cover a lot of the grounds that you're talking about within these work sessions too, rather than call it an official retreat. But I'm open to whatever you guys want to do. What do you think, Mr. Sage?
Can you clarify what's the difference between the work session and the retreat? Just so
really, this would be what traditionally. This has been sort of an organizational meeting. So we're setting, it's in January usually. We're a couple days off, and we're setting our vision for the rest of the year, or at least until the next meeting, right? So we're getting our building assignments if we had them. We're getting our committee assignments. We're talking about board goals. We're talking about all this stuff in this specific this specific meeting. Sharon's going to talk about how we want to, it isn't normally on the agenda, but her being new to us and us to her, she's going to kind of feel us out here a little bit later on how we want to get and receive information. So this is sort of our establishing. Usually if this was a newly elected president or vice president or whatever, this is their chance to kind of bring, come in front of you and ask how you want that information, to set that vision for the year. The summer one has been sort of, I think we've done a summer one in the past, but it's usually kind of a recap and how we want to, where we're at, if we missed anything, if we need to kind of pick up the ball and move forward. And I think what Neil's suggesting is continuing some conversation. I think we're sort of already doing that. Like I said, work session, it's again, just a free conversation, no action items. We're just having a discussion, except, you have the opportunity in these meetings, and I've sent out a couple emails regarding this. If you had something that you wanted to add to this agenda, just as in a work session, agenda are usually more targeted. we'll have a work session so to answer your question on what the difference is, usually a work session, it's more targeted to a specific agenda item like COVID update or, bond issues or whatever. This is a sort of a shotgun approach to where we're at and where we want to be. So there's a lot covered in this. I always thought these meetings could be done in an hour, but when we meet face to face and are eating pizza and wings, it usually takes 3 to 4 hours sometimes for these meetings. I'm not sure how virtual is going to go, but so it's just more of a, like Andy said, it's more of a open discussion. It's usually more casual because we're usually off site. We're usually not on YouTube. And it's usually kind of us sitting around a table, but less than 6 feet apart in the past, obviously. So this is a much different look for a retreat than we're used to. That was a long-winded answer, but that's kind of the difference.
I was just going to say, just meeting remotely doesn't mean you have pizza, which is on deck, Mr. President.
Yeah, I've given Miss Irvine the DoorDash information, so hopefully next time everybody will have a pizza in front of them.
At least a slice. And then, but no, my vote is shorter agendas and more frequent meetings. The long agendas it just makes me tired. So shorter meetings, even if we have, like Neil says, a couple, 2 or 3 more, whatever. They're better with fewer topics anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Craig.
If I can just take a quick stab at trying to sum it up for Sean, because
thank you.
I know there's other people watching too. So you have 3 kinds of meetings. You have a regular meeting, which is your regular scheduled meeting. You have a special meeting, which is called off schedule from your regular meeting, and you have a work session. That's it. Those are the 3 types of meetings. So the first 2 you can take action at, the second one you can't. The retreat is just kind of an informal, long form work session. So it's not a formal type of meeting. It's just a work session where we've taken on more board individual topics. Like, you can throw anything on here. We can talk about it and see if it's something we want to give more attention to or not. And that's why we've kind of done it like that. I don't know if that explains it better, but
thank you.
Sure.
Well, for example, if we have in the first quarter, some issues with the bond or some new topics like the turf, we can meet and discuss at that retreat and say, we might need to establish a committee. So midway, and if, Neil is talking about quarter retreats, that's picking up and saying, okay, we need to go in a different direction. Maybe we need to add another liaison somewhere. So that's kind of what I see. Let's fix it or fine tune it and go in a different direction, or figure out what we need, but that we don't cover in a work session or a regular meeting.
Okay. Well, kind of going off that then, Darlene, I guess we'll just kind of keep an eye on it and trust Sharon to let us know if there's areas in which she thinks that she sees that she may need some board attention or something. And I mean, it's easier for her to see on a daily those areas. And if we need to, if it turns into something that we need to discuss, we can get together for sure.
Right. That sounds good.
Okay. All right. Self-assessment. I looked up the emails on self-assessments, and I don't see. I have a terrible memory, but I don't see us. I didn't see one in an email since like 2017 or 18. Did we do this the last couple of years?
We haven't done it in years.
17, right? All right.
Right.
So that still stayed on there. I did ask Miss Irvine to look at it. The MASB doesn't do it the same way as they used to. It's not a blank form and you go in and you do it and all that. Now they actually have to do it where they come out and do it, kind of a thing, and it costs money. So I'm going to say that knowing you all the way I know you probably aren't interested in doing that right now. But you guys let me know if you want to do. What is it called when they come out?
Well, they facilitate.
A facilitated.
Yeah, you go on their link and it's an online survey. The results go right to them, and then they come and facilitate the conversation around those outcomes with you. So, that's just kind of what the board has to decide they want to do or feel like it would be of value.
So is that something that anybody's interested in doing this year, or at least to discuss at this meeting? If we want to do a self-assessment through the MASB through our MSB partners. I got a thumbs down.
If we were to do something like that, I would, the idea of doing an online survey, which is a very restrictive, narrow way to get opinion, that leads then to someone coming in and facilitating, consulting with us about how to improve or whatever our objectives are.
Right.
If they were individual conversations and there was some depth to those discussions in advance, that would be a little different. But I'd see it as a waste of time if we filled out some online questionnaire and that someone who doesn't know us, has never met us, has never worked with us, tries to come in and fix us. I see it as an exercise in futility.
All right. I got two votes down. What, Dr. P, what say you?
I think that if we want to have a short assessment, we can use one of the old templates or just put a few questions on what do we need to improve, how, or just simple like that. And we can discuss it between ourselves, like, assess ourselves and say, okay, do we need to do this better as a board? So that may be one small way to have a discussion, but I don't think that any of the other things we need.
Will you help me with that ahead of our next retreat in the summer? Maybe you and I can get together, and then we can facilitate that ourselves, kind of put together forms that, from the past, and maybe we can just send it to everybody ahead of the meeting and then analyze it after and kind of see if there's some similarity in responses and see if anything goes off the charts.
That sounds
We
good.
can kind of do it ourselves. I don't think that we got 4 thumbs down on that. I just don't know if it's, again, to me, it's not about time or content. It's about money right now.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. We don't want to do MASB.
Next, board goals. So this is the part of the agenda where we want to talk about, at least from now till summertime, until school's out, kind of if we have any specific goals. I know that Mr. Sage and Mr. Lamas have, they want to see some, the turf field rectified. That's a goal to get that done. So I've heard from some of you on different goals you have, but is there something that we want to put on paper as a board? I mean, getting our kids back to school, getting our seniors back, safely, and our kids, safe in school. Those are goals. Is there something specific you guys want to talk about here, Mr. Craig?
Goals are more long-term. They're not, when you're setting up like goals like this, it's things that are, again, more long-term, not things you can get resolved in a short amount of time. That's
all right. So this is like the whole kind of, this could be, like for instance, like busing or something like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, goals and objectives really need to reach far, and I guess you want to have a couple of targeted ones.
Thank you.
If we work that way, yeah. I mean, everybody's got a goal of getting the kids back to school, and everybody's got a goal of, getting the turf fixed. Or, those are short.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. We're thinking more. When you're doing like goals and objectives, you're thinking more of like long-term, big picture items.
All right. Well, I'll start then, and thanks for the clarification. I'll start then with what I did as my suggestion, busing. I think that we had analyzed a couple maybe a year and a half ago, and they looked at sort of the communities that outreached a little bit beyond the busier streets, and we talked about that. So that would be a kind of a goal of mine to kind of bring when I'm thinking about kids and getting kids back into our schools, I think that might be a area of opportunity for us. What about anybody else? Mr. Green?
Well, I'm going to back up the busing. First of all, I know that's been something that Jason really liked to explore in the last year, and we couldn't do it. 2 years, really. He's really asked about when we can bring it back. I do believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but what makes this more feasible, Sean, I know because you're new, and I was going to, is that the laws change where now we can use different type of funding in busing. I think that we could not use sinking funds. I'm not sure. We can use, the sinking funds. We couldn't use sinking funds under the law before. So we couldn't use any of our sinking funds to explore busing, because I know that Jason asked for PDFs to take a look at them, but we didn't think we had the money and where we could get the money. Well, now the laws changed, and we can use sinking funds for busing, and with that's a game changer, that now let's take a look at those PDFs again, understanding that where we can draw that money from and allocating that money, being fiscally responsible, and see if it works this time.
Well, if this is something that I'm going to bring up later in the meeting, which is, some strategic planning around growing enrollment for the district. And a well-constructed survey of the families in Southgate, not the families that go to Southgate Community Schools, but the families that are living in Southgate who have school-aged children. Would they attend if they had busing? And I think it would be an interesting analysis to know if, in fact, busing would pay for itself in the increase of students or close to that. When you got rid of it, you found out that any savings you got had the long-term effect of decreased enrollment when people stopped attending the school district because they didn't have busing. And that was a short-term, windfall
with long-term results.
with long-term impact that showed that was a very costly decision. So if you can reverse that analysis and have some studies or have a work group that's studying this, what does it mean? But I think you could find that it would pay for itself if you could get information about your community and whether or not they would use it, if it would change anything.
Okay, so it sounds like that's a good target, and we're going to learn more about that a little bit later.
Well,
right?
one of the things that I was going to say is, for the most part, many cities will continue to add bonds because they want to improve. There's more things that they need to improve, or like update their buildings or busing. So I think that if we keep in that direction, we can always put it on there to see if the voters will vote for it. We can't lose that way. But the other thing I wanted to mention about the goals is I think it's important to even just to state on there and to put as a goal is to improve student achievement, especially right now during the pandemic. So that's something that we can work on. That'll align with the superintendent's goals. That's part of what our goals do too. So hopefully, that's something we can add.
Hey, Darlene, you blanked out on my end. You said improve what?
Oh, student achievement.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any ideas? Some long-term goals that we want to focus? I mean, these are good goals. So we'll kind of work towards these goals, and if we could think of anything else we want. Oh, Mr. Freitas.
I know we've talked in the past about like Beacon and Asher, like those programs, to really analyze those programs to make sure that we're spending our money wisely and we're getting a good return on that. So maybe really look at those programs to see how we're doing there and what could be done to enhance it.
Okay. I did speak with and Sharon, I'm not sure if Jill touched base with you about this or if you know anything about this, but when I was running in 2016, when we were looking at test scores for the district, what we found out is that those schools were kind of lumped into our district totals, and they were kind of inadvertently driving the numbers down a little bit. And she said that there was new legislation. This was before this pandemic happened. There was new legislation where we can sort of back those numbers out to get a true accurate number. Have you heard? Do you have any update on that?
Yep, and it's happened. It's happening now. The superintendent of Wayne Risa sent the agreement over for me to sign on that we would like to have the scores redistributed to school districts. But that also means that the students that we send out for, site-based or, those programs outside of our district, those scores will come back to us too.
Okay.
So if there are residential or there are any self-contained programming in other districts, whether this is something that we'll find dramatically improves our student achievement picture, or if it's just balanced out by, the full composite of the various levels of least restrictive that we may not have. It could.
I don't, the least restricted, I know that's part of it, but I think the bigger issue that Tim is talking about is, and you know, I taught at Asher, so I'm not ridiculing Asher. And I know the laws have changed, you know, with adult ed too. So, and we're more of alternative ed and pupils under 19 than we are PARs, where 10 years ago it was the other way around. But the Asher graduation rate, the state used to get, you know, within 4 years from the day you enroll is a graduation rate. And Asher's graduation rate, because it took over 4 years, 80-90% of the students who graduated from Asher, it took well over 4 years. So they counted as not graduating. So the graduation rate was like 6%. So instead of Southgate graduating 93% of their students, it looked like we were graduating 88. That's what Tim's talking about. I think is that changed how they're structuring alternative ed programs.
I believe so. I think that, but I'm recalling my experiences in another district. I'm not, I have not specifically looked into that regarding Asher.
And that was one piece of it. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, that was one piece of it for sure. But the other, you know, like when I was trying to research where to put my kids in school, that's what you do a Google search and you search the district. And, you know, that was one of the reasons I ran is because of the low test scores and the graduation rate. You know, it's just something a new parent looks up. And when you find out after that it wasn't the fault of the board or wasn't the fault of the district, it was a fault of a calculation issue that shouldn't have ever happened. And all districts have, or most different districts have, you know, maybe a school that does that. So, you know, I just want to know if you can keep us up to date on those issues, just so we know where we're at, you know, officially, because that's something that people look at, you know, when they're researching a new district. And we have such great things here, and we have more great things to come with the swimming pool and all kinds of great stuff. It's just so exciting to be in Southgate schools right now, and I don't want to shut the door on people just because they're looking at a number that's perhaps inaccurate. If we don't have anything else, then we can always go ahead, Mr. Craig.
Just kind of, I guess, to kind of circle back to what Neil was talking about there is, I mean, a lot of this came up originally when we realized we had subsidized some $275,000 to the daycare program at Asher. And I think what, I guess I don't want to speak for Neil, but I think what I'm taking from that, because this is what we've talked about before, is analyzing if those programs, and I will say until I'm purple that those are great programs, they're admirable programs, but should Southgate take on the burden of what really is a Wayne County program? And if we have to subsidize it from our general fund, then our general fund is losing out at the cost of providing other service. That's what we never really got that answer to that. And that's what I would love to kind of find out is, you know, are those programs that we should be housing, or are those programs that should be maybe a Wayne County burden? And again, I know they tell you, oh, you get this back from Beacon, we get this, but we spend, at least in my last 2-3 years looking at it, 90% of our HR work is spent hiring teachers for the Beacon program. So where does that come back? Where does that get recouped and realized? And I think that's what we really want to know.
Definitely. That's always an ongoing conversation.
Go ahead, Andy.
Mr. Green. Mic on. Turn your mic on.
You're on mute.
I got it. All right. I got it. I'm in so many dang meetings today. Yeah, I have to say I agree with Jason and Neil on the same boat. We've asked about these things. I know at one point we had to restructure and figure out that the daycare was coded wrong, and then it said it was going to be zero balance, and we haven't really seen an update of those numbers in the last year or so. If we've seen it the first year when all the restructuring went, but we haven't seen it since to see where we're at with that. And Ms. Irvine can tell you, in one of our very first meetings that I had with her, she asked me, what I thought. And, I said, I think we have to reevaluate buildings and programs. Is it feasible for us? And on top of that, where our enrollment is and what programs we're going to have. And I know there's new ideas from Ms. Irvine for different programs, but is it, I know Mr. Craig are always is talking about what's the total cost, what's the overhead, what's the total cost, and is it feasible for us if we don't gain this enrollment back, how do we house these new students, and how much further can we go if we don't get those students back in a year or two of for example, keeping 4 elementary schools open. So it's programs in the efficiency of the programs and the buildings is what I think a big goal is for us. And I'm not saying that means to close any program, and I'm not saying that means to close any building, but I think we have to do our due diligence to, if we're talking about goals, to explore those 2 big issues on top. And I agree with busing, obviously, too, and with improving test scores. But I think reevaluating or looking at the building structure and the program structure and how it fits into our goals and our economic feasibility is something that we have to, take a look at.
Would that fit into strategic planning? I think that would fit in.
Yeah. I think so. And that's what at the bottom, I would like to have a series of work sessions where we are studying all the different pieces of our district and making some recommendations and thinking through what a long-term plan is for facilities, for what programs we offer, where we offer them, and so forth.
Because it's been a few years since we had an update on our strategic plan.
And that too, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I was just writing notes while everyone was talking, and Dr. Irvine, I agree with what you're just saying. We don't need a strategic plan book that is this big, but I agree that we need to evaluate our sustainability. Where are we today? Who are our customers? Where are they coming from? What are our capital assets? Where are they in their life cycle? Building utilization, all the kinds of things, the bigger picture things that'll help us make those decisions. So I would 100%, we don't know what our real costs are. We know how much we spend, but we don't understand our costs. And that's if you don't do that, you can't run your business. And we've been lucky with the some funding yet. But anyway, I agree. That's the way I would 100% support that. We need not to build a book that's this big, by the way, which I've done in the past, and we just need a sensible plan for this group here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Neil, you're next, but I might want to point out that you've spoke for a total of 1 minute and 30 seconds tonight. And that's like a record for the whole entire time you've been on the board. But go ahead.
I guess another goal for me would be like for athletics. If we can kind of get a strategic plan for our athletics, working from the high school down to the middle school to the elementary, and even reaching out, creating a partnership with the YMCA. If we can get everybody on the same page, all the coaches, and come up with a game plan on how we want to do it, bridge the gap with the Southgate Vikings for football. I mean, we really need to build the partnerships up in the community to build our athletic program up. We have a lot of people working really hard, but we need everyone to be on the right bus, heading in the right direction in the right seat.
I
So
will say,
I'd like us to talk about that and kind of get everything, like have a plan from the top to the bottom on how we're going to do it, how we're going to get there. We have different coaches working really hard, but if some of them partner together, just like the concession stands inside, we have so many different groups working. If we can work together and get like one popcorn machine or something and share it with Southgate, we don't have to have everybody doing the same thing.
Mr. Sage.
oh no, I just agree wholeheartedly with
Okay.
that. That's all.
Andy, do you have something else? Your mic's on. That's what I'm asking.
No,
Okay.
no, I think I have no problem with that either.
All right. So for our goals right now, I have busing, improving student achievement, and that, these all can go on and on and on. I have exploring like I guess strategic planning. So exploring the program's buildings, economic feasibility, athletics, and facilities. So I guess that would be strategic planning, which you're going to get to later. But that is, if that sounds like, it sounds like that's a goal of ours too, is to get a strategic plan of where we are and where we want to go. And that, But like Rick said, you got to have the data first before you can make the plan. So getting to know where we're at before we can take a step forward. All right. Good stuff. Communication.
I'm sorry, one other thought on some of the bigger pictures for planning. If this doesn't fit here, let me know, Dr. Irvine, but I think performance management, focusing on our people and making Southgate a shining star for folks wanting to work here. And part of that comes from the things we've just talked about. Part of that also comes from an effective performance management process, which means that building managers manage a budget. They're responsible to you, or whatever the hierarchy is to be. But there's a format and a process for managing performance, managing to budget, and having responsibility and accountability for that. And those are just pieces of it. But I think, and I know that that's some of the stuff you talked about when we interviewed you. So I think that should be a part of our overall planning.
Yeah. Are you thinking of more along the lines of administrator evaluations at that point versus, for instance, the teacher evaluation system? So the teacher evaluation system, for instance, is very robust here.
I'm thinking of a business and an operational process.
Right. Okay.
Who's responsible for what in the buildings? I'm a principal. I have a budget. I'm responsible to you for my budget. Here's my plan at the beginning of the year. Here's an update in the middle of the year, and so on. It's a way for you to measure the performance of the folks that report to you and those that report to them. But yeah, not a teacher.
Okay.
A skill thing, no.
Tim, one of the other things I was thinking about too, and I don't know if this is a big goal, but I've always pushed for student pride. And I talked about, having Anderson on the tennis courts and other places in the building. So Jill was good enough she had all these new window decals put on the doors and everything. So that to me is a good, in the right direction for student pride. But then I think I don't know if that goes in the line of marketing too, but I think student pride is one of the big things too that students need to feel when they're in the buildings, where it says Titans everywhere or Anderson, or, it just needs to be more prevalent where, in the high school, I think it needs to be, improved. But I don't know if that's a goal, but that's something I like to push for.
Well, I know Sharon shares that same vision with you, because just in walking the schools with her the other day, we're standing at Grogan and she's looking at the high school going, they need something over there, so I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also, an advantage of having somebody kind of new come into the district, because they bring a different vision, so I think that she shares that vision, and I share it with you as well. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Communication. So it has, I'm not sure exactly what this specific topic means, but what it means to me, because I know Sharon's going to talk about that also, as far as, what we want to receive, when we want to receive, if we're okay with how things are going. But as far as my communicating to you, I just want to try to find out what's the best way for me to communicate with you, because it's difficult reaching all of you and even coming to a consensus on a date. The amount of time spent on that, obviously I'm doing it wrong. So would you guys prefer email, text, or just me pick up the phone and call you and say, can you meet this day? Because communication has been difficult to reach this board during this pandemic. And I just want to find out what the most effective way is for me to reach you guys. What's your preference? Phone, good old fashioned phone call?
Text.
Okay.
Because I've got email.
All right. Got it. I just want to do it where we can get together. Emails, you could type a lot of stuff in an email, but not everybody, that the inbox gets buried in our everyday life. Okay. Or maybe we do they send the email and then send you a text saying check your email, kind of a thing. All right. Anybody else have anything about communication, about how we can better communicate?
Well, right now, Dr. Irvine's doing a good job, better than what I anticipated or expected. Not for you personally, but just I've always asked for, we as a board, we've always said, whatever you can just forward it to us. It only takes a couple seconds, but she's doing perfect right now. I don't want to have her send any less, but right now it's just she's keeping us posted on what's happening. So I like that.
Good.
And also, I'm sure Sharon's going to talk about this, but I don't know if you guys saw her latest newsletter. There's a newsletter now that she's sending out to staff and students, which is great. I love that communication. But anybody who wants to be, and I might be stepping on you here, Sharon. If anybody, I did a little article submission to that, but that's open for anybody on the board at any time. It's not like a board president update. I just did the first one, but I invite you guys also through Sharon to submit an article for the next version of that. Is it a monthly? It's going to be a monthly?
Yeah, it is monthly, and I have talked to another board member for next month.
Awesome.
So I think
Okay.
for March.
So if you're interested in that, please contact Sharon, because I think that's a great way to kind of reintroduce ourselves to the public and kind of let them know where we're at.
I think so too. Is this the time that I can start talking a little bit about information?
Yeah, if you don't have that on your stuff at the end, why don't we use communication? Take this topic for yourself.
So I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about a process that I've used or have been involved in other districts related to board member questions. So, a lot of times you think, hey, look, we had this question, and one of you wants to know, where are we at on this? Where are we at on whether it's the cell tower issue? Maybe one of you has one of those questions. So the process that has been used in other places is, if a board member asks a question like that, the response that the superintendent will do in this system is take that question, answer it, through email, and then give that answer to the full board. So, for instance, it's like, okay, here's Mr. Sage wanted to know what the status of the weight room is, and this is what it is, and then everything goes again to the full board, and that keeps all of you kind of informed on topics that you may also have questions about, just like Mr. Sage might, or whoever has a question. All of you are thinking it, and so by getting that answer, that keeps all of you on the same page. So you don't have certain board members who know certain pieces of information and other board members who may not, because they just didn't think to ask that. So if you're comfortable with that system, it's just a way to keep, all of those things that are moving forward and the information flowing and transparency happening. So I'll just say, Dr. Pamponio asked this question, here's the answer to that, and this is for everyone to know. So if you're
That's a good idea.
open to that, I think it would be good.
I agree.
I think it's great.
Yeah, that's what we had a couple years back, because some of the information was just between the president and the superintendent, and the board said, well, just forward it to everyone so we know what the other board members are thinking and what the outcomes were. So yeah, that's good.
And
That's my approach.
what I might do, is, just so that it's all manageable, is it would be part of the Friday update. So any questions asked during the week, I can get that response, and it can be part of that update. And so if you're comfortable with that being the timing of it, that way you're not inundated with emails constantly coming at you. You have it all in one location. Maybe that would be helpful.
Jason.
So I think that's probably really good for everybody. But Sharon, I want you to be careful, because if any of us are asking questions that generate work for you, you need to push back on that, because we don't get to create work for you. So if that's the case, then you need to encourage that board member to say, look, if I wanted some huge report about some information, you're going to have to push back on me and say, no, that needs to come from the whole board. Now, simple questions that have simple answers, of course, you don't go ahead, but just be careful. You don't let us create work for you or staff without coming. That direction needs to come from the whole board. Again, simple questions are one thing, but if it's going to be a lot of work, I recommend you push back on that board member and direct them to say, hey, this has to come from the whole board, because this is going to entail lots of work. That's where I would caution you. But yeah, the day-to-day, I would say that's that's really effective.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed about you as a board, and I know this is just because it's you, and you can get a board member who has some really kind of far-reaching ideas about information they want to know. That's always possible, and that would definitely be a moment in which I would need that support and help. The topics that I have encountered with all of you right now have been ones that you guys have all talked about. Like what's the status on, well, like the ASHA graduation, what rate issue? That would be a perfect one to be, everyone wants it. And if once I give it to you, then at least, I don't look at it as work that is wasted, because it's going to have to come up at some point, and it's work down the road that I don't have to do because you now know. You know what I mean? So I do see sometimes as efficiency, as an opportunity to keep you up to date, and you don't have those big questions, so that when we come to these moments in these work sessions, you don't feel like you have to dissect, 50 different discrete budget elements, because you already have a working knowledge of a lot of them, so we can really focus then on the ones that are at hand. So I do agree with you, though. If it becomes tedious, if it doesn't seem to have large board value, then I would definitely push back.
Mr. Green.
The only thing I'd add about like communications, and this would go back to when we're in our regular meetings, and I don't know if I'm the only one who's irked by this. And it hasn't happened a lot, and I know it happens every once in a while for minor details, but over the past couple of years, there have been incidences where we get the board packet on Friday, we're looking through the information, everybody seems to know what's going on, and then this was when we were face to face, and then we're sitting down at the meeting, and as we're sitting down there, there's an addendum right in front of us that we didn't know was coming. We didn't get a memo that it was coming. And it's like, well, no, we have to add this, we have to have that. And we literally got 10 minutes to look at it before, administration at the point wants us to vote on it. And I respectfully ask that, not that you've done it, not that you practice that way, but that has been a practice that's been accepted around here. And can we try to shy away from that? Because I'm going to get to the point personally, or I'm going to ask. I'm not the type of person who looks at something and wants to that's just me. And I think a lot of people here, pretty much everybody here is like that. If that's, happens, and I think at one time, Mr. Craig and I both agreed that we wanted to table, or vote it down. We couldn't really table it because we just got new information 10 minutes before. And we just want to make sure that that's a practice. And when I say that's a practice, it usually comes when there's a report from the schools, or there's a report from a director, or there's a report from something, and that we want to buy this or we want to do that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I forgot this. Let's slide. It seems like to me, let's slide this into the motion. And that's something that just irks me. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's just my opinion. So anybody else can chime in if they think I'm wrong, then okay, I have no problem with that. But I just thought I would throw that out there.
So in go ahead, Sean. I was just going to say another strategy for helping prevent this in other districts is doing like a for future action item on the agenda, where you get a chance to, something's going to come down and you get to see it the first meeting. You could ask questions between the first and the next meeting, and then you vote on it on the second meeting. So you actually have some time to ask the questions. You know what the request is going to be. You ask questions, then you get the chance to vote on the next one. That's also another process that some districts have used, and that may not be necessary, but that's a.
Well, typically, isn't that part of the work session? We've gotten the recommendations in the work session before,
Yep.
and that'd be okay.
I was going to say the same thing. We're already sort of scheduling this work session, so maybe for now we can handle it there. But that's interesting. So a future agenda item is an interesting topic for an agenda because it does just that. It's a study. You're letting us know what's coming and giving us an opportunity for you to present it and for us to have discussion about it, but not take action on it. But like Darlene said, that's something currently that we can do in that work session. But once we get past that, hopefully, then that would be, I would be interested in that as a practice, but we can revisit it at that point.
Yeah, and I don't know how though you get away from these emergency purchasing issues though with the $3,500 limit. I mean, it's tough to not have something that comes, last minute if you got something that breaks down and you need to make a big purchase like that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean it. I mean, I guess I'm interrupting. I should let you finish. I'm sorry. That's not what happened though. It wasn't for emergency purchase. We understand that. It was, here's a report. We need to make an adjustment and need approval to this and that, or we forgot to this, or we need to add that in. It's not just the little, I mean, to me, that's a little thing. We understand that overall. It's throwing a sheet of paper with basically a whole new motion or a second part to a motion that wants to get slid into an original motion that seems to have been acceptable practice for a while. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the little idiosyncrasies of things like that. I guess while I got the floor is that the future agenda item, I guess my concern would be is when you present something like that, are we borderline, are we going to start sliding down that slope of making decisions, which is illegal? That's, that would be my concern with that to some degree, but that's just my opinion also.
Yeah, Mr. Craig.
So this was something that we have kind of gone back and forth on over the years is because two superintendents ago would say, okay, we're going to do the work session. So then the cameras would get turned off. We would do the work session, which was all of the valuable discussion that happened around an item. And then it would show up on the next agenda and we'd just vote yes with no discussion. And we got away from that, where we were actually having the discussion during the agenda item because of the value there for people to see. It wasn't just like everything was getting rubber stamped. So I don't want to be careful that we're not using work sessions to discuss everyday items that we should be having that discussion on in the business meeting, because that's our business. I know we've kind of swung back and forth on that, and I think work sessions have their place, but I don't think that all of the discussion around an item being presented should be lost in those work sessions. So just my opinion.
Just to note, previously we didn't even have cameras at all. We didn't even have video. And in the work sessions, we always had it open. People did show up, but yeah, I agree. It's only for discussions that are urgent or complex, because we don't want to be put in a position where we're amending and re-amending in a situation where we look like we still need to discuss it and work on it.
To maybe use it on, as infrequently on complex issues or something. It's nothing that I don't think that this board is ever going to steer away from discussion in a meeting. But maybe a work session would allow us to, for instance, ask questions of the Colt team where we normally wouldn't do in a regular, just to kind of wrap our brain around something.
Right.
But yeah, as far as a regular business practice, I agree with Jason on that. There is, it is good to have those discussions in a business meeting, but if it's a complex issue, I think a work session would be, or future agenda item, however, whichever way it shows up, could be beneficial. Yeah, Mr. Sage.
So this is off topic from that, but as far as communication, one thing that I've been new to the board that I see that we often do is, we'll approve different items that are over $3,500, so on and so forth. But I think it'd be good to know when these things were accomplished. Like the Chromebooks that we ordered over close to a year ago or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that at? Where are we at with, we signed off on the heat for the weight room? Where's that at? The trailer, was the trailer purchased? And I don't want to get so inundated where it's micromanaging, but I would like to have an idea, like if something's not getting complete, what's the reason and how do we move forward to get it complete?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So once we make those action items and we're making that expense, some follow up or follow through when it becomes accomplished. That could even be done in a Friday update. Doesn't necessarily have to be done in a board meeting, but great idea. Good.
And that would be a good board question type of item. Like I noticed we 2 months ago, we purchased this trailer for the band program. Where is it at? What's going on with it? Those would be really good ones, probably for that too.
Anything else on ways of communication, Sharon? Do you have anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, so things like parent complaints and so forth. So many of you'll get emails from families and just forward them to me. My next step is to forward that to the principal and to get follow-up from the principal. And then what I can do is also go back to you and just let you know the status of it, that you received this concern. This is how, they've dealt with it. And this is, kind of where we think it is at this point. So just encouraging you to forward those as concerns come up, and we'll handle those. Just like the citizen comment, I did add now a section in citizens comment where I'll find out if the individual would like a follow-up call from the superintendent or not. Sometimes those discussion points are really rhetorical. It's, citizen comment isn't really about asking a question. It's really just about stating kind of an opinion on how things are going and whether they want to talk or not. So I'm adding that, but I will follow up and make sure I have that contact with them as well. And then Friday updates versus emergency notifications. So my position is, if there's an emergency situation, I'm texting you and I'll just let you know right then. And I'm not waiting until Friday to do that, just because I think you get big questions right away, and you need to know, what the status is. And so I'm probably not going to use Friday updates to, do any crisis accounting unless there's some follow-up and some residual pieces you needed to know about. So if you're comfortable with that approach, then okay. All right. Those are just the items I wanted to cover.
All right. And as far as what you're doing for communication, I think has been great. Like you're reaching out to us with that Friday update. You're sending us emails, especially with this COVID crisis, as you're getting the information, you're keeping that line of communication open. Your new format in which you're sending out the monthly newsletter. These are our great communication pieces. And some of us like a lot of information, and there's some of us that just want a little, but at least if you send it out to us, it's up to that individual whether you want to read every piece. I don't know if everybody here is signed up to be on the all staff email. You do get a lot in there, but there is good information that comes out of that as well. So if you are interested in that, you will have a very active inbox, but you can pick and choose. Like, I don't read everything from Jerry about, new hire, new job openings, that's not necessary to me, but anything that comes from Sharon to staff, I read, and anything from staff that might get copied back to Sharon, I read. It's just a good piece. And I think that there was something that came up that Jason missed because it was in an all staff in the past. So I want to make sure that Sharon, that you're not assuming that everybody's on all staff email.
Yeah, and the important ones I'm putting board members as
okay.
Also.
All right, yeah, because
speaking of which, if you are interested in getting this first dose of vaccine with the group, please let me know right away because it is scheduled for Saturday, and we are writing letters to let to kind of provide that cover that says that you are assigned or employed with the school district. And you're working on behalf of the kids, and you're involved with staff, and so please make sure you touch base with me if you want to be included in that.
All right, perfect. All right, number 2, budget. Sharon, do you want to go into this?
So I can just touch base briefly on the topics that are here. Timelines. So I'm expecting Barb to get together or pull together a second amendment of the 2021 budget in March. Normally you wouldn't have 3 or 4 amendments, but she did one in December, and unfortunately she didn't have a lot of information at that time. And so the quality of it was not a high quality accounting. So she does feel that she would be able to be much more precise in March, which generally annually That's usually kind of February, March is when that first amendment happens anyhow. So that'll happen coming up. And then I'd like to start having some conversations in April regarding kind of budget priorities. But I know that Rod Green talked to you guys about when it might be reasonable to have a first draft of an original budget for the new year. And that is in May and not in April. And I know your calendar says April, but the quality of what is going to get produced in April is going to be really low. And you're going to have it, the number of changes that will happen between April and the end of May are going to make that April one pretty pointless. But if we can talk about what those priorities are, just kind of bulleted priorities of where we want to put money, we can still have some of those resource allocation conversations, whether it's through study sessions or work sessions, or it's through the finance committee, however we want to
suggest that. Yeah. Generally when I was on finance, that was generally functionality of that committee, to talk, to bring that suggestion to the board, on how they wanted to proceed with that. So, I mean, obviously based on what you're saying, going into a May makes more sense to us, but once the finance committee has a chance to take a look at that and digest it, they can give their opinion on that matter. And that would be the same as far as any of those timelines budget wise. We have specific ones I know that are on the calendar, but if it makes no sense to have it in April just because it's on our calendar, we can certainly move that to May. I don't think that anybody would have a problem with that, especially since it would be better information.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to feel like, what did we look at in April? It just doesn't even look like the same thing. So we just don't want that to happen. So, okay, that would be good.
Program funding.
So
I think go ahead.
Yeah, this is the Asher and Beacon kind of analysis. Is that?
Yeah, I think we kind of covered that a little bit. Andy, did you have anything more on program funding by chance, or did you already cover what you wanted to talk about there? And I think Neil and Lamas all sort of talked about the feasibility of it, whether or not we need to do it and analyzing it. And I think that a lot of that can come out in a strategic plan.
Right.
But as far as for a budget, that would be, let's get to May and see what things look like, and then we can make some plans from there strategically.
Yeah. And I talked to Randy Lipa about our interest in analyzing Beacon and Asher, and he is supportive, but I'm going to be connecting with the CFO at Wing Risa so that we can get their support in handling that. One of the problems with having such a downsized central office is that we're all busy doing the day-to-day administrivia that often districts have other staff for, so poor Barb, she is doing a lot. I'll tell you though, I'm impressed with how when she feels convicted about some financial something, she goes after it. I mean, the cell tower issue, she went after it, and she won't let it rest, and that's a good thing. But sometimes it just means that the larger, more comprehensive analysis pieces that we want to dedicate some time to, we may need some extra eyes on it to understand it. But
I think that Beacon and Asher were two things that we talked about, and then of course, to Mr. Craig's point, the child care or whatever the proper word for that is.
Are you talking about latchkey?
No, the one that he was talking about earlier, as far as Crystal Priest's program and the functionality, and
they renamed it as preschool after we said something, but
okay.
Yeah, really, I think preschool needs to be kind of part of that programming too. Is where does it make sense to have a preschool? How do we want to operate that? I guess that would probably fall under program funding.
Okay.
Yeah, just one comment about that. I mean, that can be a feeder to our schools if we do that right. Jill and my wife did that at Corman, remember, and for several years there, we had a really nice funnel of kids running from Mary's group through Jill's, and it was a really good thing for the district. So if we get our ducks in a row on that pre-K stuff, it'll be a boon for us.
Right. And along those lines, we're starting our kindergarten enrollment planning and our recruitment process in terms of getting into other child care centers and making sure they know we're available and getting our kindergarten roundup connected. I have an exit report for all the families that have left our system. Over the last year, I'm going to be calling and talking to families and finding out where, what would bring them back. Do they have kindergarten, kids, or, we're going to look for those opportunities. So that's big planning that's happening right now. And I think all of our cabinet kind of talked about, we're not even doing a good job with managing, the transition from our own preschool, making sure that, those connections are there. Or what are we doing on enrollment? Which brings me to another, and see, this is all part of work session stuff, but, we need to have centralized processing, enrollment processing. We shouldn't have enrollment processed in every individual building. We really should have one source for enrollment processing so that we're consistent in how we handle it. And it would bring about a lot of efficiencies, because right now you have each individual school handling their own enrollments, and you get some very inconsistent results that way. And you don't have common experiences that families have.
You're controlling the situation. You're controlling the messaging. One person, one face, same message. I like that.
Got it. So it's what happens when in that face-to-face interaction and start to finish in enrollment. I got it. Okay. Yep. I would agree 100%.
And I don't know if this would be under program funding, but we usually talk about it, but I'm not sure where it would fall or if it's even a topic right now, but school of choice. We've had different opinions on this board about school of choice in the past. So I'm not sure if this is the right spot for it or not.
Well, right.
Strategic plan, actually.
Our application.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else under program funding that we want to touch base on? I think that we already kind of went over most of that. Next is marketing. And I know you're covering marketing in the next segment. So why don't we just wait for that segment to go into marketing in general? We'll just generalize it in there. Enhancement millage. Do you have any updates on that? And I think Sean's made some great points along the way, over the past several meetings, but even tonight about enhancement millage, regular updates on where we're at. And then, between Rick and Sean, always having a hawk eye and following up and making sure that we have a responsible party that's looking over these things as they're being done and signing off on them. There needs to be a little bit more. And I think having those liaisons now might help in that enhancement millage and bond areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So enhancement millage, the updates, we're looking at about 1.3 and 1.4 million this year. Last year it was about 1.5, and it's tied to funding, or tied to student count is how we get the money from the enhancement millage. And this year it'll be attached to the 75-25 weighting system that our state funding is built on. So we are protected this year. After, when 22-23 hits, that's when enhancement money is going to be also distributed to charters and non-public or private schools as well. And so once that happens, we're going to probably get about 75% of what we're getting now from the enhancement millage for the next 6 years after that. So we would still have a pretty solid stream of about $1 million a year coming in from enhancement millage. Now, this has not really been released yet this year for spending. So I do think that there are some pieces that we need to put in place for funding, which I think our athletics needs some funding. I think we need to make sure that we do some marketing monies involved for the enhancement millage. So that's the kind of the update. When you look at it though, paired with the CARES Act. So the CARES Act was, we've had 1.9, we've spent about 1.8 something. There's about 1.9 million, and we're about to get another 1.9 million from the next round, which means all of these, COVID costs, our medical assistance, everything that we're doing right now for safe schools are all going to get covered by that. We're also going to be able to offset some of our general fund expenditures as we use it to pay partially for the administrative time that they have used to handle COVID-related safety protocols in their building, or administer their, the COLT team planning. So we're going to be able to use that in ways that will help quite a bit. So I think this year we're in good. I think we're going to be okay financially. I think we're in good hands with this extra money given to us. That's going to make a big difference for us. So I do think we need to start thinking about, and then of course we're buying more Chromebooks, and the touchless, the touchpads are supposed to come in February 15th. That's the date they've given us at this point. But we're really nervous about it. And I don't know if you're aware that Chromebooks, we had orders of Chromebooks, and they canceled the orders and basically charged more for resetting it because the costs of these Chromebooks have gone up. So it's interesting.
Demand.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that update. Does anybody have any questions for Sharon on either Enhancement, Millage, or CARES Act, which she quickly covered, or no? Okay. All right, well, let's go to section 3, marketing. And this was an area, I believe that Sharon, you added most of the stuff. You want to go into this and then we can jump in?
Well, you had also brought up marketing, but increased enrollment, that it needs to be one of a big goal, overarching goal for the district. How do we, what kind of, person-to-person relationships can we draw with our community? And I do think being back in person right now is helping. I really do. I think that there's a lot of positive. I called somebody for a professional reference, and they said, I just want you to know that I'm a teacher here in Allen Park, but I have a kid in Southgate, and the way you guys have rolled this out has actually been phenomenal. And I think she's a little frustrated what's going on in Allen Park, but she said it's been strong, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from parents. Not to say it's perfect, but we've gotten some good feedback for it. So like I said, kindergarten enrollment right now, we need to increase our social media presence. There is what I'd like to do in a work session around marketing, and dedicate it to that, and bring in some options we have for some consultation work. And by consultation work, I mean like they overhaul your website for you. I mean, as Dr. Pomponio knows, I'm not a proficient website navigator. I was changing her picture, and then I ended up putting 2 pictures of Rick Lamos in, one for her and one for Rick.
Rick for a moment.
Yeah, Rick.
Well, for a moment, he was both Dr. Pomponio and Rick Lamos. So that's the value I add to that website. But there's a company that it's a minimal cost. They'll come in and they'll overhaul it and make it much more user-friendly. And it's just really been neglected for a while, not out of a lack of care, but just a lack of staffing. And so rather than paying for staffing to be in that role, you can pay a nominal fee. It's really relatively, like maybe a couple $1,000s, and they'll come in and redo it all for you. So I think those are some money, some options that we should look at in terms of branding. And then, of course, we've got our marquees, and kind of looking at what those look like across the district, and what those branding looks like, and what is the curb appeal of the high school going to look like after this bond is done. And let's take the money that was scheduled to go into those marquees and say, we're going to reuse them, and repurpose. I mean, we took a look at the fact that there's a marquee on the wall that no one uses, and yet they were, planning to replace it. And so what was the point of replacing it? Kids don't get their information from marquees anymore. They get it from social media. They get it from their phones. That's not where that happens. So there's just a lot to go into that. And I think it could be its own work session to talk about and see what our options are, and have some other thoughts on how we want to spend that, or spend some enhancement millage to improve, because I think every dollar invested in this is going to pay for itself with increased enrollment.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, Rick and I and Darlene have talked about that before, about reinvest. Your marketing. We're trying to get customers, as Rick and I like to say. from a business standpoint. And you got to spend money to make money. And one of the things from your interview that we liked is you had some good ideas in that area of reaching out to those folks. And you see commercials on television or on the radio. Those things aren't cheap, but what is the return on investment? That's what we need to analyze, because we've seen a declining student enrollment now for several years, and it's been blamed on 100 different things. But we need to go after a little bit more.
It has been blamed on 100 different things, but I'll tell you, when you're surrounded, one thing that people from the downriver area will say, at least superintendent ranks, they'll say, I've never seen communities so tightly together and so surfacely friendly, and then stealing each other's kids constantly. This is where if you are around districts that have busing and you don't, that's not an attraction. There's everything around you. And so what new programming can we bring to Southgate that is not anywhere else in the downriver area, where we would attract, because you're within driving distance from so many other districts, that families, if you have something that's unique that no one else has, people will come to that. And then combine that with busing, and you could see a really dramatic shift.
I can't wait to hear your ideas on some of those new programs and stuff as we scout for new potential kids in our schools. Dr. P and Rick, you guys had a couple statements you wanted to make?
Go ahead, Dr. P.
Yeah, just something just real quick about the buildings. We've had old lettering from the high school since I went to high school. And when you see other buildings in other cities, you see, student pride, and you see the big name by the football bleachers, and just driving by the community, the people in the community tell me all the time, when they see that, when they see interaction, they just feel proud that they're in the community. So, to get some lettering on the high school that says, Southgate Anderson or STA, and then Davidson is one I think that we've neglected for a long time. So to get one of those signs, even though we got a social media market, but just to see a sign out there, because they're the only school that doesn't have one of those marquee signs, to announce all the sports and activities, I think that's going to help a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we need to look like we're vibrant, and we're pulling energy,
Right.
One of the things that I think we have to consider too is the soft side of the marketing, and that is customer experience.
Yeah.
And I'll use one example. And I was in Grogan a year ago spring, and there was a parent night of some kind there, and I just hadn't been in that building for a long time. So I was just wandering around the halls, and I stopped in to see a couple of teachers I happen to know. And then I was on my way out, and there was a couple with their child who were trying to get in a closed door with a darkened classroom. And as it turned out, that teacher couldn't make it that night, but there was a teacher in an adjacent room. I don't even know her name, but I sat there dumbfounded. That was the best selling I've ever seen. It was awesome. These parents were very disappointed. Their kid couldn't see their teacher and all that kind of stuff. And this person first of all, was awake enough to notice and just did an awesome job. So if I were to say, here's an example of what everyone in our building should behave like in front of customers, that would have been it. So, I mean, it's asking a lot to ask teachers to learn a whole bunch of other stuff because of the demands on them already, but we should think about the soft side of that whole thing too.
Yeah, your teachers are what's keeping kids here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Regarding the social media, is there a number of people that are operating the pages? I know there's a parents page, which is completely separate. And Sharon, I know you're the page, which is awesome with the kids' pictures and so on and so forth. Is this, I don't want to call it a burden, but is this falling just on you? Should this be dispersed so it's falling on?
I get to Facebook. This is great. It's so much fun. I don't Snapbook. I like Facebooking.
the more touches we have, whether it be, whether it's, Mitch Doback for the football coach doing all football pictures or each category, each I don't want to say each teacher, but administrative person in there, it can't all fall on you.
No, of course.
But if we continue to say that social media is the way to go, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it can't just be
No,
It can be one person, but that's too much for one person.
it is. Right. And so every school needs to have their own media presence within their school, so that it's not just the district. There's one district level one, but then there's got to be, every building's got to have one. You've got your athletic department needs to have it. You're right. It needs to be coming from lots of different places. I agree.
Are we set up for that? Is there a umbrella per se that, who's doing what as far as social media is concerned, or is that not in place yet?
It's not in place yet, and it needs to be. We need to be more strategic on it.
Okay.
And this is part of the things that I think bringing in a consultant, and I hate those words, consultant, but my apologies to anyone who's a consultant, but that's not always what you want to have, come in. But I do think on the business side and marketing side, I think it would be helpful.
Thanks.
All right. And then that brings us, well, we've already discussed, do you have anything to add to that newsletter? I'm sorry, I knew that we were talking about it, but I didn't know it had its own bullet point. Did we cover that? Okay. And then number 4, strategic planning work sessions.
Yeah, that's the part where I'd like to see us schedule some work sessions. I know we're talking about them for the return to school planning, but I'd like to schedule some for this idea of facility, kind of what's our current status, what's our facility analysis right now, what's our costs area, maybe some ideas around new programming. And I think there's a lot to be talked about. And the plan, or at least the vision, is going to carry lots of different pieces to it. And so some work sessions around that to keep you guys kind of moving with it, I think would be a big one. Like, for instance, Michelle and I are going to be meeting to talk about IB programming and see what that looks like for those startups. And that's something that Downriver does not have at all in any program. And the 3 top achieving high schools in the state are international baccalaureate programs. So it's just something that, what could we offer that'll stand us out? So we're going to take a look at what that looks like and start kind of seeing if it's feasible and what does it take, and getting people on board. And at some point, if that carries some momentum, I'll need a liaison from the board there, to be a part of those conversations too.
So what we've had before, and I've been part of 2 strategic planning committees where the teachers that were chosen, it was just a wide variety of people who met and discussed different components of that strategic plan. And then maybe 1 or 2 or 3 board members would be present if they wanted to, but then we put it together, and it was a committee of several meetings. But I don't know how you want to plan that, or how that's going to work.
2 separate things. We see kind of moving the board in a direction of seeing some moving pieces and getting you guys in front of them enough to understand. And then I see, when we're talking about a strategic plan, the 5-year strategic plan,
right.
That's a needs assessment that we need to do. That's, our teachers need to be involved. That's a way more comprehensive. And I think if we want to,
that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, that might be a year 2 thing, like next year. We consider that.
No, we like the strategic planning that keeps us moving along with what's happening. So that's what I'm talking about with you. But I didn't know if you were thinking about the other bigger.
Yeah, I was, and I was thinking of this part first. But yeah, you're right. It's all part of it. It's all part.
No, that's good. That's fine.
Yeah, and if you have, we could try to tackle multiple, at least a couple, or at least 2 topics on these work sessions, rather than having them every week. We can still, I think that we covered a lot of ground at the last work session, as far as, the pandemic and kind of where we're at with, there was a lot of explanation going on in that last meeting regarding our return to learn and some of the things that go into that, the metrics and all that. So I think that some of that we don't need to recreate every week or every other week, but it's more to continue the conversation as far as what's new and prepare us for a decision to make
Mhm.
2 weeks from then. But I don't think that always has to be a 2-hour discussion. I mean, it might have to be, and that's fine if it is. But I think that if you want to add something into those where we cover 2 topics,
Mhm.
and we'll get through as much as we can till Rick falls asleep, and then we'll go from there.
Well, we know it's adjourned.
Just keep
I
it
can live
moving.
up.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? All right. Well, thank you for setting tonight aside for our board retreat. And I look forward to seeing you all at our next board meeting next Tuesday. Mr. Craig.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to adjourn?
Absolutely.
Support.
Okay.
Supported by Mr. So that's a motion by Mr. Craig, supported by Mr. Lamas. Any discussion? I just want to say condolences to Dr. Poponio for her loss of her uncle, and congratulations to Steele Sage for his victory the other day, second place. Good seeing you all. And with that, I'll take a vote to, or if you can call the question to adjourn.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, so roll call. Trustee Lamas,
Yes.
Trustee Poponio,
Yes.
Trustee Page,
Yes.
Trustee Craig,
Yes.
President Estimer,
Yes.
Trustee Friedis,
Yes.
Vice President Green.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. It's 7:46.
Good night, all.